All right, hello and welcome. Today I am here with Bonn. Bonn, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So we plan on
Good.
doing two kind of podcast discussion style videos, and today we kind of wanted to talk about the greater lore and narrative of Marathon and dive into how we kind of feel about the history and all the insane stuff that's going on. How do you feel generally about the marathon narrative? I guess you run a marathon YouTube channel, so I'm assuming you're a fan.
Yeah, well, I recently started my channel not even long ago at all, and honestly, just completely drawn in by all the amazing visuals and the story behind it. Honestly, I really was just dragged into that, and I loved learning about it and just making videos on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And have you played through all the original games yet? Are you familiar with kind of the narrative that they came, like the conclusion through Infinity?
I'm not Infinity. I've like started playing the second one, and which is taking time. I don't know why it's taking me so long, but I've played I think 7 hours. No, I think in my first one was about like 12 hours of the original one, and I'm up to like 7 hours in the second game. Still not finished,
No,
but
I get it.
it's
I am
yeah.
not, and this is what I say when I do the streams when I was playing Classic Marathon when it came out on Steam or Classic Marathon 2. Like I
Mm.
am not, this I'm not talented in the boomer shooter kind of style, but especially if you take your time, and you go through and you're looking for every terminal and reading, yeah, they definitely take a lot
Yeah,
longer than you
exactly.
would suspect.
And I'm really like not used to like I have never really played single player like story driven games in my like time playing games really. It's
Oh,
mostly
okay.
been like multiplayer PvP games. Yeah, so it's definitely a switch up, but I like it a lot, and definitely recommend people play them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell people like you should play it, but if you're not going to play it, you should read it. You should go through
Yeah,
to
no, true, true.
read it
And
as a book.
definitely, I think we should link the Google Doc with all the terminals in it down below because that would have helped out a lot when I started.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forget who put that together, but yeah, we'll definitely put that in the description. And yeah,
Yeah,
that
definitely.
PDF includes like in the back, it has some contextual stuff that they had pulled from the marathon story page and like interviews throughout Bungie's kind of time working on it. Yeah, that's like a really good resource.
Hmm, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think just to kind of start off, we'll generally, start kind of in the earliest stuff on the timeline. And then we'll work our way down through the marathon itself and kind of talk about maybe some of the stuff that we see in the upcoming narrative, what we've gotten so far from stuff like the ARG and the trailer. Sound good?
Yeah, cool.
Cool.
Easy.
Okay, so I broke this up into times here, but I'm gonna refer to this as the ancient times. I don't know if this is
Ancient
proper
times.
scientific nomenclature here. Okay, but I'm thinking
Yeah, the
in
fun.
yeah, right. In terms of marathon, all right, I'm thinking pre 1900s is kind of our, you know,
Yeah.
you smash that all into one thing. And generally, kind of what we have going on here is we have the Yarrow and the working character, these ancient alien entities kind of existing in the universe. Yarrow are creating a lot of the technology and locations and stuff that we end up seeing in Marathon. And the working
Mm.
Kakantar are kind of like this ancient Cthulhu-esque deity of chaos that they're battling against. Are you familiar with
Mm.
the ancient aliens of the Marathon universe?
I'm not entirely like I know like the work like is it the working tack into that I'm actually like seen in any of the games and like
Yeah.
just like the mystical beings I'm guessing.
Yeah, we don't actually see them. The one thing we do get is are you okay with some spoilers? I know you're playing through Marathon 2 right now.
Yeah, yeah.
The yeah.
No,
Um
that's so good.
but in Marathon 2, or I guess technically the beginning of Marathon Infinity, kind of ends with you, the ending of the conclusion of Marathon 2 is that the four to defeat Durandal use this weapon, a trizeme, and it makes a
Mm.
sun go supernova. Very destructive, powerful alien weapon, and that releases the working cactor from the sun. The Yarrow had like used the sun as like a prison, huge gravitational
Yeah,
pull, and
right. Yeah.
so the sun of the Lehuan's star system is like their prison cell, and it blows up the sun and frees them. We don't see them; they're more so described in these very like abstract terms, and even when they refer to this kind of like ancient conflict between Yarrow and the working Caconder, they use these ideas of like the working Caconder being like waves themselves, and they're colliding and creating chaos.
Oh, wow.
But I think generally my takeaway from this kind of like prehistory era is that it established that in the greater Marathon universe, there is this kind of constant, very heroic or like classical story idea of good and bad, like chaos and light kind of thing going on, where you have this advanced race of aliens in the Yarrow who are much more similar to kind of what humanity becomes. They're driving forward technology, they're trying to invent new tools and weapons, and the Yarrow actually are the ones who created the Sphit. So like the compiler you see in the trailer for a new game, they created those. The Sphit compilers are like cybernetically augmented alien life from Lehuan.
Yeah.
And so, I think the like main thing that this ancient kind of era establishes is that this concept of conflict between powerful, spacefaring entities is something that's been going on forever and probably will go on forever after the security officer's done stomping around and shooting people with shotguns. And I think you kind of like see throughout even, Marathon and moving into games like Halo, and even it seems like with Destiny, I feel like Bungie just has like a really grand sense of heroes and this constant conflict that plays out on a very large scale that is mirroring what's occurring kind of on the small scale of what you're doing.
I mean, that's like Destiny as well. There's always like another guy that you're trying to defeat. I haven't played any of Destiny, so don't quote me on this, but that's what it seems like.
Yeah. And it's like you said, there's always that constant battle of good and evil, or however you want to term it.
And I wonder how this will like play into the new game as well. Whether we'll actually be like in this story, if there will be a villain in it, like how that will play out. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to see one of like the big kind of Easter eggs from the original game was they would put writing on the map. So like if you had like a overview, like a full size image of the map for the level, sometimes like I think all of them maybe from the original Marathon game, if you're able to like kind of pull the raw data of the overtop of what it looks like, they would write little messages in it. And in one of the levels, they wrote, "Yarrow, we're at Tau Ceti." So it kind of seems like maybe it was something they were hinting at, or, a little Easter egg they were throwing in there. So in terms of seeing like, oh, how are they going to introduce these grand concepts to the new one? We could see something like maybe, I don't know if we physically see a Yarrow at Tau Ceti, or maybe that is some sort of like, ancient sleeping technologically advanced alien somewhere there. But the whole system that we're seeing so far is, especially from the Vidoc, is the idea that's built around kind of collecting these artifacts. And the artifacts, I think, are like a direct reference to what we see in Pathways into Darkness, kind of the quote artifacts or crystals or whatever that Sergeant Eddings there is finding throughout the temple while he's trying to prevent the working Caconder god from awakening. So I do think, like you're kind of saying, is that we could see an introduction of either working Caconder artifact technology or your ancient Yarrow kind of implements coming into play here. But I do think that
that's interesting. I didn't hear that.
That idea of seeing it roll over does roll perfectly into talking about the the contemporary period of marathon here, the kind of 1900s,
Yeah.
2100s, where now we're
Yeah.
getting out of these kind of like ancient histories. What's your thinking of Pathways into Darkness? What do you think about that? And I have not played through Pathways. I've obviously like
Yeah.
read the
Neither have
stuff,
I.
but
Honestly, be honest, I have absolutely no clue. Like, all my pretty much knowledge of it has consisted of your videos,
oh, gotcha.
and so yeah, I wouldn't expect that to be very in depth at all. My knowledge, at least.
Gotcha. Well, I think the like specifically Pathways into Darkness takes place in the 1990s, and
Okay,
so
is that like
sorry, go ahead.
is that supposed to be set in 1994? Is that what that
I
is?
believe. Hold on, let me pull up the timeline exactly here. Yeah, 1994. So it takes place between May 5th to May 13th of
Okay.
1994, and the whole idea is that I guess just prior to World War II kind of breaking out, the Nazis had gone to South America and entered this ancient pyramid. Obviously, real life Nazis were very obsessed with kind of the occult and doing weird experience and finding alien stuff. And so I think they were kind of playing on this concept that Hitler may have, I think it was Mueller, he sent
In no
Mueller
way.
down to this ancient ruin in South America, this giant temple, and they kind of discover that there is a sleeping ancient deity there, and which the Pathways refers to as working Kakantur, almost I want to say as if it's like a single individual. Whereas obviously later on in Marathon, that concept of the working Kakantur is kind of more so described, it seems like, as a race of individuals, like a separate alien species. But the Nazis go to this temple to try to figure out what's going on there. Obviously fail, so there's a bunch of dead Nazis, I believe, while you're walking around the temple looking for stuff. But in the 90s, a Yarrow diplomat shows up via hologram to talk to, I guess, Bill Clinton, the United States president at the time, and explain to him that you guys got to get down to this temple and you got to kill this sleeping god or prevent him from fucking shit up. So that's kind of the plot line is you're this Sergeant Eddings guy, badass special forces soldier, and you're going to go down to the Yucatan Peninsula and prevent the working Kakandur god from waking up. So I think, like, in terms of how this ends up applying to Marathon, I think that the concept that we have something in universe that shows like the Yarrow were able to communicate with humanity in the 1900s, seemingly like unimpeded by anything. Like they're holograms, so we're assuming that like they probably exist somewhere with like super technology that's millions or thousands of years ahead of ours.
Yeah. Okay.
So it would be interesting to see kind of like if we do get some direct contact with them. We see the four in the original games, right? And we see the Svit, and we kind of have the concept these other aliens are walking around. But the technology that they reference in the original game that the Yarrow have are like, these are like teleportation devices that move entire moons, to different places in space and time.
Yeah.
Weapons that destroy suns. And so I think it's cool that they kind of introduced the concept in general that they are still probably around. And if they wanted to kind of step in and maybe stop what was going on here or interact with us or guide humanity or assist the four, they could be doing that. And the fact that
likely has something.
Yeah, right. And the fact that like they've done it before. Maybe they are still talking with the UESC or something.
Yeah, okay. I wonder how that will play into the actual artifacts themselves as well. Whether they'll be revealed to like have some meaning or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Which is interesting. I wonder how they build that into the game.
Yeah. So in Pathways into Darkness, my understanding here is that, and I've only played a little bit. I tried. I was like, but I couldn't bring myself to work through.
Yeah.
I was like, I just can't. The time. But the
Just watch the video.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, the artifacts, like give the player like special kind of powers. Like there's an ice artifact that I think like allows you to like shoot
Okay.
ice or electricity. Um, and the big thing that Jason Jones
Oh.
talked about in an interview about Pathways into Darkness is that the epilogue of Pathways, he said specifically that it's meant to displace the artifacts that were found at the, temple prior to the start of Marathon 1. So
No. Yeah, right.
even Jason Jones is kind of coming out and saying like, hey, these things are out there in the world of Marathon, that's something that's relevant to the narrative that they were trying to build at the time.
That is really interesting. Yeah. I have to say, give it off to Jason, as he's absolutely cooked with a storyline that's spanned decades. Crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's him and Greg Kirkpatrick who were kind of like the
Yeah.
primary writers on the original. And I don't even know that Greg Kirkpatrick I don't believe he's like still working in the games industry, which is kind of crazy to think about when you see people who are still obsessed with the Marathon lore, 30 years later.
Yeah. Jason Jones, he's still working at Bungie, right?
Yes, he is. I don't believe that he's like tied directly to the Marathon project. Like, I don't think he's like, he's not like the game director of Marathon or something, but I believe he's like high level general direction at Bungie, but I don't know his exact title. But I think he's kind of one of these guys where, like Christopher Barrett, had talked about kind of moving into this position as like a general, art director, executive art director, or whatever it was. So I think he's more so guiding kind of what the studio is doing as a whole, and probably putting his touch on everything, because obviously kind of like a mastermind type figure.
Yeah. Hopefully he has some say on the new Marathon.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, I think the pathway stuff, although who's to say how much they're going to carry over from that, I think is really cool, because it does kind of create this through line with this artifacts concept, and we're seeing it pop up again. And obviously, is there anything, I know you've kind of done like some really good analysis. I know your video on the Vidoc was super in-depth. Is there anything about the artifacts you think from the Vidoc, either something in the art or something from like what they said that you thought like stuck out to you?
I mean, thank you for the applaud.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I guess like the fact that's like the prime artifact. Like, what's the point of even having a prime artifact? Like, why not get out with one? Like, how would that actually play into the game?
Yeah,
Whether that's worth more in the black market, or like whoever you're selling it to as well. That's a big part for me that I'm really wondering. Like, what's the point of getting these artifacts, and like, who are they going to?
That's interesting. Yeah, so a prime art, and they kind of made it sound like it was a thing where you needed like 3 parts, maybe even. They may have even given a number. Is that right?
I think it might have been 3.
3 or
because they
5.
showed like 3 actual they showed 3 like images for like 1, 2, and 3 for the prime,
and they were separate colors as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, see, and that's another thing where I'm pretty sure the pathways kind of carry over, because I think there was like, like I said, there's like an ice crystal, electricity crystal kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
So even kind of color coding them to have different kind of elements going on is an interesting comparison thing. But yeah, that is a good question. And if these are specific things or non-specific things, what is the combination doing? Is it an energy source? Is it something that's gonna provide like some sort of ability, to somebody else? Like, who wants these, and what is the purpose for them?
It's like my thought behind it, right? It's like Traxxas and UESC. Like, why is Traxxas even at Tau City? Like, what's their point for being there? And obviously we see them there through the their logo and everything. And yeah, it's just like, why would they be there apart from like something that would give them immense power, or like something like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and I think the ARG kind of does this work to fill in the corporate questions, or like the historical kind of like textbook answer to things where it's like, oh, well, they're a entity within this world and they want to, they want to grow, or they want to be more powerful, or they want to have more technology or whatever. But you're right, that's kind of more so like a generalized sentiment, whereas like it does seem like there's something more behind the scenes that is way more relevant. Like maybe some of this Yarrow technology is way more known, to people in higher level positions, even than what we see kind of playing out in the ARG. Because it's one thing to have like this, colony ship going to this star system that's far away. But like this idea that you're dumping all these, multiple, like you said, Traxxas and the UESC are dumping this much, this many resources into going there, makes you think maybe there is something kind of more relevant, some sort of ancient alien technology or confirmation of that, that is more so the reason why we're actually putting so much time and effort into getting out there as humans.
Exactly, yeah. And like, how you talked about how like Traxxas, how you think, I think, was that Traxxas like run by AIs? I'm not sure if this is your opinion.
Yeah.
But like the board of AIs being like the board of directors or whatever. Like why would they ever want to go to Tau City for
exactly
artifacts?
Yeah, and that kind of works into to kind of this contemporary period we're talking about, because I believe 2070 is when we first see rampancy appear. So kind of just on the tail end of this, maybe like 1900 to 2100 timeframe we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
That's when humans kind of discover. Right? That
is crazy.
See, my thinking is, so we have AI who are kind of becoming, maybe sentient is like a good word, or at least becoming open to kind of an emotional understanding of things, more so than this kind of binary understanding of things. And that's happening, let's see, like 700 years, 800 years prior to the like latest events that we're getting from the new stuff. And so it is kind of interesting to think that if you have something like Traxxas 4, which was this AI that in the 2200s had gone rampant, if it's still around, how has its desires or goals changed or developed over time? And especially if we see this, like, okay, so AI have been having this problem since 2070. What components or what parts of these AI that have gone rampant are still around, either as a personality construct within a separate AI, or, maybe on their own, in some sort of net somewhere doing something crazy and trying to take over the world. How do you feel generally about the AI of the Marathon universe? What do you think? What do you think their impact on the story is?
I mean, generally, it's hard to like summarize in one little statement, but
yeah, that's fair.
I think with the space age in like this time from like 2100 to 2400, I think it's like super interesting in that like the way like where we are in history and like as people now, not in Marathon, like beginning to starting to use AI in like our everyday lives and that evolving. We're in that like monumental period where we're on the like brink of evolution in that like AI evolution, I guess, and then how that plays into Marathon and like the game that includes so much AI and so much like futuristic technologies that were so advanced for when it was made. So interesting to see the game come back now and the story that it's showing as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because in the 90s, a lot of these concepts around artificial intelligence were really like conjecture. Whereas now,
exactly,
the questions that Marathon really begs do have to do with like the ethical and moral implications of humanity created a life, basically. And it's like, so Durandal is this kind of maniacal 90s sci-fi villain, and he's laughing and doing a bunch of kind of, over the top, maybe at times corny stuff. But there is like a deeper thread there of what it,
real world implications.
Yeah, like to take this
For what?
entity who is arguably the most intelligent thing to ever exist, and then relegate them to opening and shutting doors on a colony ship and doing your bidding and stuff. I mean, what at a certain point we kind of got to ask, like, okay, were we asking for it, when we had Bernard Strauss out here poking this thing over and over again when we knew it was incredibly powerful? But yeah, that is a good point. And like you said, we're now talking about this 2100 to 2400 time frame. That really is kind of the clear line for me, where we see it move from stuff that's kind of in the realm of like what we're seeing now. We can see like the kind of beginning roots of it, to then it becomes we're like a multi-planetary kind of civilization, Because
that's like with Leela as well.
Yeah.
Like whatever happened to her, like I think I've read into it a little bit, like with her having gone to that other being taken to the 4 planet, was it?
So
and taking over there.
Yeah, Leela's probably, I think, like, one, Leela has the she goes on and to interact with my favorite alien civilization referenced in Marathon, the Nar. But yeah, so Leela,
right, yeah.
When she is removed, so when the 4 come back in 2794 in November, I believe, November or October. Let me see here. Oh yeah, October 26th. That's when the 4 come back and they destroy Tau Ceti. And at that point, the security officer in Durandal had left in the 4 ship. Well, Durandal kidnaps the security officer and puts him into stasis on the 4 ship and leaves.
Yeah.
But 3 months after that attack on the Marathon, when the 4 show back up, they blow everything up. Obviously, now we have the ARG trailer kind of showing us what at least maybe remains of the Marathon. So we see there's a lot of damage, this abandoned, colony. And they take Tycho and they kind of disassemble him and then put him back together so that he's an AI that works for them. But with Leela, they like sell the Marathon and Leela to a separate alien race. I'm trying to remember which. I forget what the name of it is, but they sell these to these aliens, and then those aliens end up not like understanding that the AI is like anything useful, and so they literally just kind of like treat it as junk. And so when Leela realizes that these, aliens just really don't have a concept of kind of what they have in their hands, she takes over, I think it's referred to as a Valet 15 world network. So Leela is existing somewhere, and this is probably all happening like in the 2800s. Somewhere on the largest network an AI has ever had access to. And
that's
kind of the proposed solution to this rampancy that these AI have is a network that would be large enough to contain the complexity of their system. So realistically, Leela could be floating around out there and be the strongest AI in existence, kind of trapped to that FTL network. But what do you think about Leela? Like, obviously, like, she's kind of the nice one. Is she like? Do you think she's like still a friendly AI, or in terms of what we see in the game?
Would you say, like, are you asking about now, like after she went rampant?
I guess. I mean, I don't really know. I would assume that she's. I think it does say that. I think it does say that she goes rampant. It's like one of the annals of history or something. Rampancy.
But I wonder what that means for Leela as well. Like in contrast to Durandal, at least, because obviously Durandal goes absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Well, and Durandal kind of. Explores the universe, and so I'm assuming he would probably take some level of interest in interacting with his old friend. He seems that kind of arrogant kind of idea would be in his head.
No,
And
it'd be very interesting to like see any of the original AIs return in the original games. That would be a very like massive thing in the game, I'd imagine.
oh yeah, yeah. Or like what parts of them may have gotten left,
Yeah, true.
by a Tau SETI, like little personality constructs or notes or writings. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, and all of the stuff around the AI kind of does tie into, while we're talking about this 2100 2400 time period, the origin of Traxxas and Sakaguchi occur here. So I guess
Okay.
let me get your breakdown or thoughts on the company Traxxas. What is your vibe on them? Their brute aesthetic of non-human corporatism.
Yeah, it is. It's strange. It's like it's sort of like the opposition to. I don't know if it's the opposition exactly to UESC, but they're definitely like. It seems as if they're very like centered around monetary gain, obviously, and just like true power. I don't know,
Yeah,
like the way that they're like all the photos and the from the ARG are very like all very similar in the style and like very just brutalist dystopian sort of like utilitarian power, I guess.
yeah. No, you're right.
Um,
Utilitarian is like
like
the
corporate
perfect
sort of,
word.
yeah,
The perfect
yeah,
word for it. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Like the most key thing for them from the ARG for me were their like corporate videos that have their maybe like corporate messaging. I believe like some of them are called like
yeah, yeah,
oh, respect for separate sentiences, the goal, and
yeah.
stuff like this.
You just reminded me of that. It's like super strange videos, yeah, of like full like it seems like videos that are made with ChatGPT now, just like super
Yeah,
like strange, just like
yeah,
not right,
yeah. Going in and asking ChatGPT, can you pretend that you are a megacorp spacefaring evil entity?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and those videos come across to me very much so. It's like if I was in the universe of Marathon and, I'm whatever scrolling on whatever the Twitter equivalent is for the security officer. And, I see those videos. I'm going to be very like, okay, all right, so this is an evil AI company. And, they have the
Exactly.
name of the evil AI, right, guys? Does anyone remember
True.
this, from
Yeah, exactly.
history class?
I
So
would I would not be like wanting to support them.
yeah, right. But I wonder, like, is this something that's way more well known and we just haven't gotten a lot of information? Because I would be interested in seeing, like, do the people of Mars, are they just, like, fully aware, maybe, that, like, this company is run by an AI? Because it just seems so,
Yeah,
so obvious from, like, the stuff that they seem to put out.
yeah, definitely. Like the board of directors. Yeah, I don't know. It
Yeah.
is very interesting, and I love the way that they're like playing all this AI, like all these questions into the story, which hasn't even actually come out yet as a game. Makes
Yeah.
my hopes a little bit high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get me
Yeah.
excited.
Well, the setup for it is so good. There's so much depth to
Exactly. Yeah.
what was already there, and then also the way they kind of filled in the gap. So yeah, they're definitely like leaving this crumb trail to something way greater.
Mm.
Yeah, and Traxxas is kind of like the, I guess, like one half of the megacorp entities that we're like get a lot of information about, and the other is Sekaguchi, which also has its kind of origin story tied back to this time frame as well. What do you think about Sekaguchi?
Yeah, yeah. Sekuchi, I guess it's like, well, my idea of it is just like a genetic company that has branched out to a bunch of different technologies, and now they're supplying both UESC. Like, I think, in my mind at least, from what I know, is that they have like, uh, they have complete like control of the market for like the clones, I guess.
Yeah.
And maybe actually, I'm not completely sure of that because in the trailer, in the reveal trailer, we see the little silkworms with the Traxxas
Hmm.
logo on them, which I saw today, and I was wondering about that, whether Traxxas makes those or if it's Sekiguchi selling them.
Yeah, and well, the another interesting thing is that in the specifically to that in the ARG, we get the email chains for Yoshido
Yeah.
Tamura, who works for Sekaguchi, and within those emails, one of I believe the chief technology officer even goes kind of on record to say like, hey, we're selling our birth pods, like some of the equipment that we use
Okay.
to make these clones, to Traxxas, and if we put this proprietary technology into their hands, they could reverse engineer it. And I believe the kind of
Huh.
sentiment expressed is that they have like an agreement that Traxxas, oh hey, yeah, we're not gonna back engineer this and figure out how to do it so we can,
Oh,
X you out.
interesting.
But that's a really good
Yeah.
point, and I'm sure Sekaguchi obviously is aware of that. And I wonder if that kind of including those emails, and obviously, like you said, pointing out here that now they, Traxxas is kind of labeling their own version of it. I wonder if that's kind of building up a separate conflict that's going to exist between these two megacorps
Yeah,
who
true.
kind of seem to be
And
working together.
and something to add on to that, it's like with the birth pods that you mentioned, also in the trailer we see one of them completely just like the green one labeled Traxxas. And that makes me think about like if AI is able to get their hands on something that produces like something like people, obviously, clones, being able to clone themselves, it's like what will stop them at that point? Like it seems like they'll be able to do like anything, like produce like unlimited biomatter
Yeah.
and completely just flood the market or go against the UESC.
Yeah. Well,
I
and
don't know,
what
it's
kind of
interesting.
control do like AI have over Biomata? Like why? If there's a neural interface within these clones, some sort of technology that allows a human consciousness to integrate into the system and control it as, as if it's their own body, why could an AI not do that same thing? Surely they're
Exactly,
complex
yeah,
enough to
exactly.
understand that.
I'd imagine they are, and that would allow the AI to like have a body to be able to like interact with the real world, I guess,
Yeah.
which is interesting to think about.
Yeah, especially when you consider how much damage they did in the first trilogy, only being able to interact with the world through like old school green terminal screens.
Yeah,
They got a command
exactly.
line and they're
Yeah, and
destroying
door
things.
controls.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, that the whole thing around Sakaguchi kind of I feel like ties into the 2194 war between Icarus and Thermopylae. So we have like these two governments that exist on these separate like asteroids, I believe, and
Okay.
they introduce battleroids, and there's this technology
Yeah.
where they could bring soldiers kind of back from the dead with technology and turn them into
Yeah, yeah.
these killing machines.
Yeah, I remember reading something about temporary like warehouses or something like that, like temporarily plants where they used to do that. I'm not sure if you recall that at all, but like,
Yeah, well, I think after, so they put the battleroids obviously into this conflict, and they kind of kill everybody. So it's ended this insane super weapon, and obviously, um,
okay.
going into the kind of original trilogy of games, there's kind of this conjecture around, is the security officer themselves a battleroid? Obviously, they're called like a Mark IV cyborg,
Yeah,
one of the 10, most likely. But are they these, super soldier weapons from long ago and import on the ship? But yeah, I believe after they make a note, kind of after the battleroids are introduced, that the UESC kind of implements some sort of regulations to where if you have battleroids, you have to store them in a certain way, and they can't be used for a certain thing. They're kind of treated like how maybe in a modern context we treat like nuclear weapons. In that,
yeah, right. Okay.
it's a very controlled and regulated thing, but and so like governments
Huh.
have them, but it's kind of this like mutually assured destruction thing where if you
Yeah.
put this madman cyborg guy with a shotgun on a planet, he's gonna kill everybody who lives there.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
But I think it's cool
I
that
wonder how.
they carry that over, with a lot of the Sekaguchi stuff. Like a lot of Sekaguchi stuff seems to be building on, that kind of integration of man and machine.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder whether we'll be like what difference that has to us playing as runners. I guess. Like, are we like? I wonder how if we're like equivalent to that level of destruction. I doubt it, but like, I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see how we are injected into that
Yeah. Yeah. And
as
another
players.
theory that people have talked about is that potentially the thing that may have made the Mark IV cyborgs, or maybe even potentially the Battleroid so deadly, is that humanity may have secretly been utilizing some like Yarrow kind of technology to develop them. And so I wonder
Hmm.
if are we kind of
Oh,
as
okay.
runners, are we like a human version of that where like we've back engineered this technology that we've been using to integrate people with machines. And so it's kind of like you said, maybe it's not as good, maybe we're not as destructive as these kind of like world ending implements that were developed back then, but is this the human version of that? Is the technology being
Yeah.
used here fully developed but maybe based on that?
Hmm.
I
Okay.
Something tells me I feel like if I'm in like what is it? They have like class A, B, C, and S and P,
Yeah.
for
An
the
S.
biomata. Something tells me if I'm in a class A biomata, I'm not going to want to fight the security officer. But that,
Maybe imagine if that's a thing in the game.
yeah,
Fight the Mjolnir Mark One or whatever it is.
yeah, yeah,
Cyborgs.
yeah.
End boss, I think.
That is a good point. That because the 9 of the Mark IV cyborgs were on Tau Ceti.
Well, on Tower City, yeah, true.
So we could see
Hmm.
them, which would be an insane kind of boss battle buildup if you're walking around and you come across with this ancient
True.
cyborg guy who's probably a little upset with how things played out. And then, yeah, I think that covers like most of the stuff from 2100 2400. I think would be kind of relevant. I think also that might be kind of like when Mida starts to come around to existence, and then obviously we see kind of the Martian Wars coming up, but I think that's about everything. Then kind of the next era
Yeah.
would be the marathon project time, and kind of classifying this from like 2400 to 2794. So basically, right after Deimos is purchased to when the marathon's kind of destroyed, I would say is the era of the marathon itself. How do
Yeah,
you?
okay.
What's your kind of general thoughts on the marathon ship? What's some stuff that sticks out to you?
Hmm. I mean, I guess like one large thing is like the big difference between the old marathon ship and the new marathon ship, which is very interesting, and a massive design shift.
Yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
wonder like what the relevance of that is actually in the game as well. Whether it will mean anything or whether we actually aren't even looking at the marathon ship
Yeah, I
or a
know.
new version of it.
So I've talked about kind of in my last video, I kind of did like a little more deep dive into the marathon ship itself and talked about some
Yeah.
speculation. Kind of the conclusion that I came to is that it appears to me that what we're looking at may be the equanimity inside the carcass of the marathon ship. Do you have a kind of opinion? Do you think what we're looking at is just like a pure redesign of the original marathon, or do you think that it's more like something new? Is this like maybe a combination of the equanimity inside the marathon, or elements from a new ship?
Mhm.
Maybe. What are you thinking? Or do you think it's just this is the marathon? And they changed it from looking like a weird potato, something a little more sleek.
I mean, yeah, I do get the design change. I don't blame them for it if it is that. But no, you definitely raise a good point when you say that it could be built inside the new marathon ship as like the as it's revealed in the ARG documents, like the dimensions as well as like those big pillars holding it
Yeah.
inside. So it's super interesting. Um, I'm not really sure honestly whether like or what I don't know.
Yeah, I would be.
Like, sorry.
it would be interesting to see if it is a redesign. I would love to see some sort of like cutscene, or something, some sort of within the new game, if we were able to see that kind of like an up-resed, high resolution, high scale version of the marathon, even if they just have like, like maybe like a newspaper style clipping with a picture of it. Because I do think it'd be funny to see that massive satellite and a much different structure.
Potato.
Yeah.
I do wonder whether that like this ship will have any like actual relevance in the game, whether it will be like a playable map or the or like a social hub that we see in a lot of other extraction shooters.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest questions for me about it.
What would you prefer? Would you prefer to see something that is like a kind of like non-combative zone that you get to like explore? Would you? I know you said you haven't played a lot of Destiny, but are you familiar with kind of like the tower there and how it's like set up, where it's like vendors and like sightseeing and there's no fighting or anything there?
I'm not. I haven't played Destiny at all, so I have like absolutely no clue about that.
Yeah.
But I've played a couple of different extraction shooters. Like obviously in Tarkov, I think if my memory serves me right, I haven't played that game for absolutely ages, but I'm pretty sure there's like a home base that you upgrade over time and like do some sort of upgrades to it. But then in the Cycle Frontier, I played that a fair bit, and that had like sort of the same thing pretty much, where it's like this space station above the planet, in which like it's just like a sort of social hub sort of area where there's a few different other players before you drop into the game. And I think personally, I'd really like that as like, I think this like the newest extraction shooter that came out recently was, I can't remember the name of it, but I've seen it on like a couple of YouTubers videos. But they had something very similar where it's like an upgradable home base sort of thing where you can change things and like get different perks and stuff like that, which definitely I want to see in the marathon. As like, why wouldn't they do that really?
No. I'm torn because honestly, I feel like it may have been you that I first like kind of heard that idea of. I don't know if it was in like a live or something that I was doing, you were chatting, but that concept of having it like a kind of non-combative zone.
Sort of
it would be really cool. And I think obviously something like that might quell some of the fears that people are having about the not customizable. That's a great word that I just invented. The customization options that people are kind of worried about, obviously, with the hero shooter stuff. I think having something like that would probably soothe a lot of people's like, well, if I'm going to be dumping a bunch of times this live service game, I want to have, a character that I can call my own kind of idea. But also I love the idea of this like, have you seen the like original like Alien movies? Have you ever seen those? Or Alien or Aliens? God, well, this idea of like this dark ship that's kind of destroyed and floating in space, and being able to kind of navigate the halls and see. Like, I think for an extraction shooter, there's this game that's not out yet called Level Zero Extraction or something that kind of does something similar to this, but they do it in a like a science station in the North Pole or something. But this idea of this really enclosed space is cool. And introducing some of these kind of, I don't want to say like horror elements, but maybe horror light elements where, you have the Sphit in the trailer, kind of this glowing ball, and it's in this kind of like dark lawn corridor, it seems. Yeah. Like that moment on an abandoned marathon ship with the right sound design would be really sick.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And the element of, oh hey, I'm also, I'm in a PvP match right now and there's other people walking around would be so cool that I think it could go either way, but I do hope that, like you're kind of saying, I hope they include it in some way. Either way, I hope that they bring it back in some format and you get to experience something of left of the marathon.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think a big part of like good extraction shooters at least is like definitely like that home base sort of thing, I guess, where you can upgrade it and just like coming out of the match and being able to have a like area to like de-stress from the bloody stressful
Yeah.
environment that is like
Yeah.
actually being to get shot in the back of the head and lose all your gear
Yeah.
is a very like important thing. I will be very surprised if they don't have it.
Yeah. Honestly, even with that, you're right. It maybe like a nice little like tea time kind of corner, or like a little like you can burn some incense and just chill, you know. That would be a that would
Maybe
be a nice,
meditate a bit after
yeah, a bit of
fighting
respite.
some like alien creature.
um but yeah, the marathon, just everything about the marathon is so cool. It's like, you know, it's a colony ship, it's built out of, you know, a moon from Mars. It's just such an awesome idea. And the fact that you have like these
Mm.
bobs, you know, these people who are generationally kind of tied to, like, they don't understand really the concept of like a home planet in any real
Yeah,
terms. Like their parents, you know, were born and died on a spaceship. And I think that stuff is like where Marathon kind of opens up to these really cool science fiction concepts that are a little deeper than what, you know, a lot of maybe less like pinned out science fiction games really kind of delve into.
yeah, definitely. Like even the Second Frontier, like playing that, there was little to like no story in that game, and I think that obviously combined with like the hackers in that game led to like the death of it, obviously, because that's
Oh,
shut down and gone completely sunset now. But it was also in that like sort of science fiction narrative like genre, I guess.
yeah,
And I'm very happy that Marathon's doing something very different and like very unique and just in depth with it, which is very cool.
yeah. Well, it's like people pour all this time into the art design. It's so good, but some of that can be kind of lost if it's face value. And I feel like even what they've
Yeah,
shown so
exactly.
far, the ARG, is like there is such a depth to it that it's like you can appreciate
Yeah,
it on this visual level, and also you can appreciate it on this thing where it's like layered. You know, there's a tertiary reason
exactly.
for
Yeah.
why it looks this way. That's cool to delve into. It gives it that much more kind of influence in the narrative.
And like
Um,
that for me,
sorry, go ahead.
that for me, and I'm sure like many others, like that's gonna draw so many people into it
Yeah,
if the game plays well at least.
yeah,
But
yeah,
no, that's a very good point.
yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
miles ahead of any other game in that sense, I feel like.
Yeah,
Especially in the extraction shooter genre.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's even like the stuff that you see like with Hunt Showdown, where they kind of have these
Yeah.
lore compendium. Even that is like, that's probably the deepest thing that I've seen, and
Mhm.
that's cool, and I really like it. But you're
Yeah,
right, it is kind of surface level information in comparison to a, you know, 1,000-year history that Marathon has.
mm. Yeah, they really stuck to it, which is good to see.
And then obviously, kind of, I think the other big thing about the kind of Marathon project era is this conflict between MITA, this, you know, political organization on Mars that seems kind of more maybe like socialist conceptually. You know, they're very like for the people, and they're trying to prevent like an oppressive or a presumed oppressive government with the UESC from kind of basically abandoning them, wronging them in a bunch of ways. What's your
Yeah.
take on MITA kind of in general?
Um. Well, yeah. Obviously, it's that like sort of rebel group of like mercenaries, in my opinion. And with me, at least, I've been wondering a lot on like how that's going to be integrated into the game. Whether we're actually going to be able to interact with like the story behind Mida in the game, and whether they'll be at Tau City. Like, is that going to be possible? And I know you like went through the ARG and looked at the artwork and all that, and like deciphered all that stuff. And I think it's super interesting to see that they're integrated into the people within like the companies that exist in the game.
Yeah.
I think that's very cool
Yeah, it's
and might
cool.
actually play out.
It's cool because MITA is also like this spy kind of organization almost, where
Yeah,
they kind of have that thing where it's like they have everybody looking over their shoulder, who's a Mida sympathizer, and it does seem like they do truly have some level of kind of involvement behind the scenes, that because they're not as powerful obviously as the other entities that we're interacting with. When you look at something like Traxxas or the UESC, they obviously have a lot more wealth and weaponry, but kind of Mida's power seems to be that you don't know who's going to be, for their cause, because they do represent this kind of reasonable component of, you have millions of people in the Sol system and on Mars who are kind of at the whim of corporate overlords, or, these extreme kind of, I don't want to say like authoritarian governments in the terms that we like have anything to directly point at with the UESC, but clearly if they're able to purchase a moon, they have a level of power that would give them the ability to be oppressive if they were to choose to.
Yeah, definitely.
And seeing the backstabbing nature of those things, obviously worrying if you're a citizen.
As a runner in marathon, I wonder if we're going to be able to interact with Mida in that like UESC. And if you drop into Tau City, explore the colony, I wonder with the oh my god, my brain's lost it. Sorry, it's late.
This is what Mida does to you. This is what I'm saying. Exactly. This is how they worm their way in.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, skip this entire thing. We'll cut on to the next part of this segment now. I was gonna go on a tangent, but no, it's not worth it.
No, but I think that does that does kind of tie into kind of like that final era that we get, the kind of common era for what we kind of at least believe or have been led to believe is what the new game is going to cover, which is this kind of after 2795 to 2893, where we see the UESC loses contact with the Marathon. Traxxas and Sekaguchi are teaming up to kind of supply Traxxas with a large amount of these biomata so that they can kind of do a power grab from Tau Ceti. We see the Equanimity launching. And kind of like what you're talking about with Mida, we do kind of see Mida directly, put out this scene that concludes with a direct call to action. Like, hey, if you're a fighter, you're a medic, you're a runner, like, let's get on these ships and we're going to, jump, scoot, and boogie out to Tau Ceti, and we're going to make sure that kind of what happens on Mars or what happened on Mars doesn't happen there. And, we're going to not let these corporate overlords go out there and have the level of control that they have here.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, which I believe is like page 34 or something of the zine.
Oh, okay. Actually, I need to look through that. But that makes me think about like how in game as runners, if we'll be selecting like UESC or Traxxas to play under, like sort of join up and like fight for them, I guess. And I wonder if the Mida. I wonder if Mida would be sort of like a spy organization.
Yeah,
making.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Sorry.
It's interesting, to see like you're saying, are they going to be? Is it going to be like a faction thing where like you can join one group or join the other group, or is it going to be something where kind of you're just like a mercenary? You're there for money, and whoever's paying is kind of who you're involved with. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
That's the interesting thing in the trailer. We do see the Traxxas player and we see the UESC player killing each other. That's what makes me think there might be like some sort of faction thing in the game. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, the conclusion of the zine being that Mida is kind of calling to action, join us runners, we're going to get out there kind of thing. And then in combination with the artwork that they display does kind of show multiple ships. So like the IRL art piece, I want to say there's like 4 or 5 separate kind of spaceships included on there. which kind of
Oh,
makes me
really?
think like, we know one of those might artistically represent the equanimity, and we know obviously Traxxas is going out there, so they have some sort of vessel, and maybe Sekaguchi has one because whatever they want to disperse, equipment, technology there, or fly a fucking warehouse out there so they can, keep our factory and keep developing in orbit of Tau Ceti. But yeah, the question of how is MITA, this rebel organization that's declared a terrorist group by the government, what kind of ships are they going to use to make this massive journey to, this distant star system? And if they're not using those
Yeah,
ships,
exactly.
kind of like what you're talking about, how are they sneaking their way on board to these other ships and then conducting operations out there?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think there definitely could be a possibility that there will be like some sort of spy like storyline. I'm not sure. See, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool that it does seem like they, genre wise, have an opportunity to set up a bunch of different things. It's an extraction shooter,
Yeah.
so obviously the player interaction is going to be so much more baked into the story, so you can't like put it as on rails as you would like a mission in
Yeah.
Destiny or Halo or something. But they do have the opportunity to create, like we were talking about, or like a horror themed kind of element to the narrative. They have the opportunity to do this kind of like corporate espionage, Mission Impossible kind of stuff going on. They have the
Yeah.
action hero storyline of you're dropped into this foreign Tau Ceti area, and kind of like the Predator, in the jungle, get to the chopper kind of thing. And then also the deep sci-fi, like, there's a bunch of AI running around this colony who are probably all crazy and dealing with them.
Exactly. They can really do like a bunch of different stuff with this game, which is very exciting for me, at least as someone making videos about it. But no, I'm very excited to see what they do with all of these storylines.
Yeah. What is your kind of I guess favorite thing, I guess either visually or narrative wise, that you saw kind of out of the ARG stuff and the new stuff that we've gotten?
I mean, I guess story wise, like really just like the AIs and like that sort of introduced me to, because like before this, I've never watched 2001: Space Odyssey, and
Oh, okay.
that entire like sort of like 1990s. Actually, I'm not sure when Space Odyssey is released, but like pre AI era sort of sci-fi. It's super interesting to see how they integrate that in like with story, not knowing how that's actually gonna unfold in the future.
Yeah.
And then I guess like the beautiful aesthetic that was that reveal trailer, and all the artwork that they've produced for Marathon has definitely drawn me in. Just
Yeah.
even like the logos for all the different factions, just like everything's really set out and like laid out, which is very exciting. And I really just like really like this aesthetic. The graphic realism is beautiful. The bold colors, it's not really like any other game I've ever played or seen. And yeah, no, it's very exciting to see them do this in an extraction shooter as well, broadening that type of genre that hasn't fully been developed yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And kind of like what you're hitting on is like, I feel like they made something that looked super slick, but it doesn't look corny. You know what I mean? I feel like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
looks
yeah.
like it's very like Akira or like Ghost in the Shell. Whereas like if you go back
Mm.
and you look at like The Matrix, that was like slick at the time. But I feel like now it's
Yeah,
kind of like, this tight
yeah, I
leather
get you.
stuff.
It's like it's stylized, but not in the way that it can like uh I don't know, like the perception of it can change over time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like with your videos, that's the thing that blows me away every time you upload. Like your eye for like aesthetic is so good. It's such a good like
Thank
visual
you.
consistency. So I'm excited to hear
No,
that that's what you were inspired by from the new stuff. Because I'm like, damn, you definitely like,
yeah.
You have a really good eye for that stuff.
Thank you. I mean, that's like you remind me, like the entire like real aesthetic of marathon and everything that makes it marathon is really like exciting, and I really like it. Like before like seeing these trailers and everything, before marathon was announced, like re-announced, right? I've been studying design for like a couple of years in secondary school, and
Awesome.
this is like the first thing that's like really like caught my attention in like the way that it's like so well done, and it's just really unique to anything I've ever seen. I just really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. The art.
Genuinely, I've like fallen in love with the style of like is it cyber acme? I'm not sure. It's just like the
Oh, yeah.
cyber like futurism sort of like tech dystopia. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Things are like falling apart, but also they're like very advanced and clean, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. And like all like the little graphic details as well, like the ASCII art. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that,
Yeah.
but like everything that's like really like merged into one, and it's really beautiful the way they did it.
Yeah. It's definitely like the most like up-resed version of like bringing that style of like this cyberpunk hacker 90s aesthetic into something that is very like contextually modern and doesn't kind of pull some of the baggage and corniness that some of that stuff brought with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm trying to even think, and I think that's one of the big reasons why obviously people were so enraptured with um the reveal, even though it's an extraction game and they're not going to hear anything about it for a year. I feel like people are still like so hyped on it because of that. I mean, Christopher Barrett likes art direction in terms of like how that was put together in the reveal and how they kind of expressed it. That's such a big piece of why. Because like, what else really looks like it? I don't know that there's anything coming out that has that level of fidelity and is like working with concepts so big.
I agree. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this YouTuber, but like he's blown up in the last few months. But Rilo, some of like he makes videos about extraction shooters. I'm sure he's gonna cover Marathon when it releases, like guaranteed. But like even in one of his videos, like mentioning how Marathon is like the best looking extraction shooter or like even game, like the aesthetic of it is just so unique. It's something that like really hasn't like captured mine and so many other people's like imagination, I guess. But it just looks really good, I have to say.
Yeah, I haven't heard
And
of
I
that.
think that's going to drag so many people into it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. And see, that's the kind of stuff that I like to hear. It's like, man, see, even people who are kind of within the realm of extraction stuff are acknowledging that. Definitely makes me excited. But I think in terms of like kind of the common era stuff that we've seen, kind of covered it. We talked about the equanimity. We talked about Maida, Traxxas, and the Sekaguchi relationship. Biomata. We talked about some AI. I think the only other thing, what is your kind of perspective on the UESC? How do you think they fold into this? So I guess what do you think their kind of end goal is?
Yeah, that one is interesting because I guess like the UESC is correct me if I'm wrong, but is like the UESC the people who actually started the colony in the first place?
Yeah, so the UESC were the people who like developed, funded, and controlled the Marathon project. So
yeah,
they put the colony ship out there and developed the plan to found the colony at House 4 and kind of conducted this operation over this, massive 400-year period. And now they're kind of, a little bit kind of screwed because now they just have this floating hunk of rock in orbit of a way distant planet, and now they have to compete with all these other maniacs. I guess probably maniac AI as well.
True. No, I don't know. It's like the USC, they have like a very distinct style as well. Like same with Traxxas, I'd say. Like the very like navy blue with contrast with white, like very bold letters, I guess. But I'm not sure. That obviously they all are gonna have like some ulterior motive, making them even want to go to Tau City in the first place. maybe the UESC is just wanting to reestablish connection to the colony, which they talked about in one of the documents that I've looked at.
Yeah.
Like with the equanimity, for example, like that's the entire mission is just to like to reestablish connection with the colony, and the equanimity itself is a rescue craft.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure fully, but that's what I think, at least so far.
Yeah, they're kind of have this dual objective, right? That kind of seems to be pulling them in two separate directions because simultaneously they want to reestablish communication, but also they kind of are doing this thing where they don't want to lose control. They don't want to be
True.
like outperformed by Traxxas and not in Tau Ceti not be the de facto government anymore. So it's kind of like they're really realistically they put all this time and effort into doing the Marathon project and seeing it through to the establishment of the colony, but now even with all that work they're kind of on their back foot and almost at the same level as anybody else who can make it out there, because if someone else gets there first and is able to repurpose whatever equipment they have left or take advantage of whatever situations occurred out there that they're not fully aware of, then they kind of lose a little bit of power.
Definitely. Like the fight for control is definitely there. And I'm also like wondering how like the relationship with Sekiguchi as well, in that we also see UESC runners there.
Yeah.
And the entire runner idea as well is like super interesting to me. Like why are there UESC people running around on the surface of Tau City getting sniped at by Traxxas?
Yeah. Well, and
does make me wonder.
In the Sekiguchi emails, we see it referenced that they're doing like legal stuff to hide, and well, they're also like falsifying documents to prevent the UESC from figuring out exactly kind of what the relationship with Traxxas is. So the purchase orders that we see in the ARG are altered to hide the fact that they're selling these P-series biomata to Traxxas from the UESC. So you're definitely right. There is kind of this strained relationship where Sekiguchi still obviously wants to be able to sell them product and have the UESC utilize their services, while simultaneously they know that they're kind of supplying both sides. They're kind of like both sides of the battle here are have the same dealer in terms of weaponry. So it does create this weird conflict of interest for these guys stuck in the middle. Yeah, I think
interesting.
I think it'll, like obviously there's just so much here in terms of the interactions between all the parties involved and how those could play out. But I think that's about covers all the Common Era stuff. And then the last stuff we kind of have here is talking about kind of Marathon 2, which is this 2795 to 2811 period. So kind of the 18 years, after the events of Marathon 1 and Marathon Infinity. Kind of, from my perspective, obviously, I don't know what you've heard so far about Marathon Infinity, but it's a little bit of a mind melter. Things get a little
sounds like it.
a little crazy. But Marathon Infinity, from my perspective, is kind of like timeline wise all occurring. It's just the end of Marathon 2. So it's like, could these things play out in like a bunch of different ways? But do you kind of have like a general sentiment on Marathon 2 and Infinity in terms of what you think of the narrative from those games, of what you know of it? Or is that something you're still
honestly
kind of working out and building out?
I'm still learning, definitely still building on that. And I do want to like somehow get to Infinity at one point when I have time. But yeah, that does sound like a brain melter, honestly.
Yeah.
And I wonder what like the relevance of it in context of like the new game.
Yeah.
Like whether it will have any actual relevance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they kind of do this thing. I don't know, like, what's like your favorite kind of like science fiction, like book or movie or or game? Do you have like a
Uh, Sci-fi, I'd definitely say Avatar, like the James Cameron avatars.
Oh, okay, yeah.
One of my favorite sci-fis, definitely, and which like I've wanted to make I've wanted to talk about this a little bit in my videos, like the sort of like the similarities between them in that like the sort of like future dystopia Pandora planet sort of like mega corporations. Like in Avatar, it's like it's sort of actually surprisingly similar thinking about it now. But like the mega corporate, whoever it is, I can't remember in Avatar, going to Pandora, going to Pandora, sorry, destroying the environment and like extracting the unobtainium is what it's called in Avatar.
Yeah.
But it's sort of similar in that like the big spaceship floating in orbit transferring people that have been in stasis for however many years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of parallels there. Even like from a kind of more like conceptual idea of this conflict between corporate interest and also like this things like discovering a new planet where there's life and aliens should be something that kind of transcends greed and like profit margins. But you're right, there's this kind of parallel between Marathon and Avatar in that sense that these are both universes that acknowledge something that from the perspective of like us now and in the real world, that's something that you think like even if Coca-Cola found like, oh hey, we made contact with alien civilization, they have this technology, you would think that even though it's this evil giant corporate organization that's using slave labor in whatever country or whatever, you would think that even in that context they would be like, okay, we're gonna try to just do the right thing here. This obviously means a lot of things, kind of changes people's spiritual beliefs and stuff. But Marathon and Avatar, kind of take it from this very probably, unfortunately realistic maybe approach where
true.
Even though this is something that's kind of alters, humanity's concept of reality, it's still at the end of the day comes down to how can we utilize these resources, turn a profit, and operate in a way that increases our power. No, you definitely should do some Avatar dissection. Throw it in there. I would love to see that.
Yeah, even like the even the aesthetic like style of both genres is like the like super futuristic like thing contrasted by the like overgrown nature of Tau City. It's all been abandoned. That sort of interests me a little bit. But what about you?
I've talked about like some of my favorite science fiction stuff. I think recently, just because it's on my mind, and I've gone through and I read Dune recently and Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. It's hard to compete with how great those things are. I do think like maybe like one-off stuff or shorter things. Like I love Cowboy Bebop. Like I think
Cowboy Bebop.
Are you familiar with that? Okay, so that's like a anime about these kind of space cowboys, these bounty hunters in space. Okay. I like stuff like that. Ender's Game is really a big deal for me. That's another science fiction series of novels. But I think, generally my concept here is asking about your favorite sci-fi, because I feel like with all these things, with Avatar, with any science fiction, the way that like science fiction builds is that you take this concept that is very like, what if we had robots? What if computers were intelligent? What if there were aliens? What if we could travel to different planets? I think you take this kind of base concept that appears as something that's flashy or exciting or cool or like an adventure, but it always it always evolves to something that's way more like metaphysical. It always becomes something that's much more abstract. And I think the cool thing that Marathon does as the series progresses is that it really sticks to this kind of true concept of like, historically significant science fiction, where in Marathon 1, it's like you're this badass, on a spaceship and you're killing aliens. And then in Marathon 2, things are a little more obscure, and you're like have this complex relationship with an artificial intelligence, and you're on an alien planet that has like ancient history, and you're interfacing with an AI that isn't even of human origin. And then by the time you get to Marathon Infinity, it's so abstract that like you're operating within dreamscapes, but these dreamscapes are maybe physical manifestations of what's occurring in real space-time, and you're altering timelines. And so the thing generally that I love about those games is that they really dive into like the end state of a lot of these technologies. Because like really, even if you look at like we were talking about earlier with kind of what we're experiencing in a modern context of artificial intelligence, this is like very stage one, being able to like talk to an AI or like have it do something for you. But what does it mean when we have something that thinks or feels, and it was born of something that we created? The implications of that are much more, I don't like that's almost like a spiritual thing, or a deep like philosophy concept that you would have to kind of look at. And so I think that those are kind of like the story things from the following two games that are really kind of like relevant and stick out to me, which are very fun and excited. I'm excited for you to play it so I can hear your thoughts on it, because it's definitely pretty wacky.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome.
And I think lore-wise, it's just up through the beginning of Marathon 2. I think everything they talk about in the ARG basically ends after like maybe that first level of Marathon 2, where Durandal tells you like, yeah, you're in stasis and colony is destroyed, Leela's gone, Tycho's after me or whatever, he says in that like this, first terminal of like the second level or something.
Yeah.
But
I wonder. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wonder. I'm not sure if this is actually, like, if this is known about Marathon, but I think it's important for us to actually like specifically point out when the new Marathon is going to lie in the actual story of in the lore of the original games, and what will be followed. What will be taken off that, and what will just be left,
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, something that they're gonna have to clear up, unless they really do stick with this kind of like obscure idea of kind of some of the stuff they're getting to in Marathon Infinity, but
timelines.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think they're gonna have to at some point say what has canonically happened, and I'm sure once we get these next few story trailers or maybe additional ARG stuff, we'll definitely get something that'll outline that for us. Or you and I, when the game comes out, will be running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to read some shit on the wall, draw some conclusion, make a video about it.
Honestly, I would not doubt it at all.
But yeah,
I'm excited to do that, honestly.
Right? Yeah, I know. Like going through and doing some lore investigation in game.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that covers it. I mean, this is a good long conversation, but obviously there's always more. But I think we got into just about everything. Is there anything that you think we missed, or anything else you want to share narrative-wise about this game we seem to have gotten ourselves tied up in?
I think we covered it fairly well. If anyone does have any ideas of what we could cover, definitely comment that.
Yeah.
And we'll try to do something in the future, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I think we covered that fairly well.
Awesome. Well,
and thank you for your amazing history knowledge of the Marathon games.
Thank you. Yeah,
the number one lore guy we have right now.
I'm sure there's some people who'd want to compete with me on that. I have to get into like a
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm gonna need like a moderator. I'm sure there's people do dissertations on it, but I'm trying my best to have a thorough understanding. And absolutely, thank you to you. I feel like your videos are so good, dude. I'm so excited for genuinely every video you put out. I'm like the first one there. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's so sick. So I obviously am yearning for
same with me,
marathon
honestly.
content. But
Your videos were the thing that led me to making this channel in the first place, anyway.
dude, that's so
Genuinely.
cool. That's so cool.
Yeah,
But I'm
it's
excited.
awesome.
I think hopefully we got a lot of good stuff coming up for us to talk about here in the future.
And the next video we're gonna be on my channel, we'll be covering the other half of this, or maybe this. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. So I'll probably do like a little intro to this, or we can do intros, for whichever one we post on our channel. But yeah, if you have not seen that or whatever, we're going to do 2 of these kind of podcast, longer discussion style videos, and they'll each, one will go on each of our channels, and we're working on some other stuff too. But if you haven't been to Bonn's channel or you haven't been to my channel, please check them out if you like marathon.
Definitely go check out Jake's channel.
I'm
sure
will
everyone
be talking.
That's subscribed to me is subscribed to Jake anyway. I would not doubt it. They would have to be.
But
who would not do that in their right mind?
But thank you, dude, so much. This is a good call.
Thank you.
Well, all right.
Yeah, I agree. It was amazing to learn all these little things about the marathon history that is so in depth.
And there's more for us, always.
Yes, hopefully, if the layoffs don't get them all.
Yeah, they got to stick around a little bit longer. All right.
Surely.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.